So there is a beautiful sutta that is often chanted. Some of you may know it, called the Five Subjects for Frequent Recollection. Very much rooted in cultivating, strengthening, abiding in equanimity. And I wanted to start with that. I'm going to read it and just kind of pay attention to each and see how each may be connected to equanimity, especially the fifth, the last. That's what I'll be focusing on a bit today. So, I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. And that last one is sometimes translated as, I am heir to my Kamma, born of my Kamma, abide supported by my Kamma. Whatever Kamma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So it's kind of intense, right? And the first three, I'm guessing, pretty clearly relate to equanimity. How important it is to remember these bodies, remembering that we will age, we will sicken, we will die, and knowing that at a deep felt level. And the fourth, that what is dear to us has the nature to change and we will be separated from. Really aligning with remembering the truth of impermanence, the unreliability and instability of life that flows from that, and the suffering that flows from that. That last one, my actions are my only true belongings, that our actions are the ground upon which we stand. What is that? How is Kamma or karma connected to equanimity? And why would it be so important that it would be the fifth of these subjects for frequent recollection? Karma, the concept of karma, is unfortunately so often filtered through our Judeo-Christian lens in the West, and particularly in the US, gets kind of imbued with this idea of punishment, that someone is deserving of suffering. And in Buddhism, Kamma is not that. It's actually defined simply as action or intention, volitional action here and now. And it really flows right from the teachings on equanimity. If we think about cause and effect, causes and conditions, right? It's not an idea of predestination. It's really teaching us about cause and effect. This leads to that. We've been talking about that. This leads to that. If this, then that. This flows from that. I appreciated this quote from an article on Kamma. It says, according to Buddhism, nothing arises without a cause. Chocolate cake does not simply appear out of the void. It arises because of conditions. And we are impacted by causes and conditions. And we are acting in the world all the time, creating, adding to conditions for ourselves and others. So I think of Kamma somehow is almost like a river or many, many rivers flowing into this moment, this being unfolding. When I think sometimes about all of the causes and conditions bearing down on us, it can feel overwhelming. There's so much that we didn't choose, just as a tree doesn't choose the soil it lives in or the weather that exists while it is alive. But as it flows, once it flows into and through this being, this body, this mind, that's what we have choice in. That's the only thing we have choice in, and only in this moment. So, really, this idea, this encouragement that we are responsible for how what arises here or flows through here is stewarded and held and metabolized. Even if some of what arises kind of flows from conditions that we didn't have control over. So, one unfortunate example that I really truly didn't plan is I tested positive for COVID yesterday, and I'm sick. I've been sick for the last 24 hours. And it's been, causes and conditions, some related to my own choices, but just noticing all that shows up for me around that, all of the not wanting, not liking, the stories that say it's not fair. I was so careful, that almost take it personally that I got sick, or that the virus somehow chose me. The fear that shows up sometimes, and all of that has a right to be here. But seeing how really it is mine to steward, and that if I'm not aware of it, I can do harm to myself emotionally, or I can put myself in a pretty bad mood that can then impact others. Whereas if I remember, oh, right, this body too, I'm subject to sickness, it also kind of connects me to every living being. And then there's that doorway to equanimity and compassion. So our actions are the ground upon which we stand, because really that's all we are. If there is no separate, solid, continuous self, then our kind of beings comprise of this unfolding, our actions, our choices within and outside of us. I have long felt very heartbroken by, but also committed to understanding how easily we can harm ourselves and others, right? We say a word, we roll our eyes, we follow a line of thought that's rooted in delusion, and it sort of dominoes and ripples, and before we know it, we're saying or doing something. With equanimity, we have that opportunity to see the tendency of our minds, that we don't have to act or react out of greed, hatred, and delusion. And there's this beautiful dialogue between the Buddha and his son. The Buddha asks him, "What do you think, Rahula? What is a mirror for?" And Rahula says, "For reflection, sir." The Buddha says, "In the same way, Rahula, bodily acts, verbal acts, and mental acts are to be done with repeated reflection." Repeated reflection. He doesn't say, see it with shame or judgment or make sure you get it right. It's really a practice. We want to see and be aware, so that again, we can work with what's here, what's showing up, what's flowing through wisely and with love. And also, this chant and the connection between Kamma and equanimity reminds me that I am only responsible for my actions. I can care of course, about others. And I'm a therapist, right? Every day I spend helping, supporting, but I can't make anyone act. When I really hold that and know that, it helps me sort of take my seat. There's a peace and a kind of coolness in that wisdom, in the equanimity that can see that I'm responsible for what flows through here, and you are responsible for stewarding and understanding whatever flows through you, however that shows up in this lifetime or in this moment. And so, again, I kind of remember these Brahmavihara practices, they're protections. They're protections for the heart. That as we abide in unconditional love, as we abide in unconditional compassion, unconditional joy, unconditional acceptance of how things actually are, cause and effect, we're protected. Our actions then flow from that. And our Kamma is then also protected, right? We're not adding fire to the world. We're not acting from greed, hatred, and delusion. So I like this quote, "You yourselves must make the effort. Buddhas do but show the way." Again, that reminder, my actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. So may we be grateful for this path that empowers and invites us to actually practice this, to be awake and aware. So thank you so much